Hello guys, this is a review of the movie Boy Raised, based on the memoir of the same name. This movie stars Lucas Hedges, Nicole Kidman, and Russell Crowe, and it follows the story of Jared Eamons. He's a teenager from a small town, born and raised a very conservative household, and it basically follows his path through conversion therapy, everything that he went through, and the things that led him there in the first place. It obviously, well, not obviously for you, but it hits very close to home, so I take a deep breath. So it's crazy to think that this is an actual, like, real life story, but it is, and it's still happening right now. So this movie, before I get into the details about it, it was a bit hard for me to follow, because it's not in chronological order. And they didn't do anything wrong. I think the movie's amazing, the movie's great, but it's just my brain wasn't functioning properly, I guess. So in present time, he's in conversion therapy, but you're going to see a lot of, if you haven't seen it, I suggest you watch it. Spoilers ahead, obviously. But then, like, they give us flashbacks to what led him there, and they don't really tell you when it's a flashback. So I was thinking, do they let him out while he's there, or is this happening the nighttime? I was a little bit confused, but it's not their fault, it's mine. So, like I said, Jared Eamons, he's a teenager, he wants to go to college, and he's doing everything like normal. He has a girlfriend in high school, but he breaks up with her because he's not attracted to her because he's gay. But like, nobody knows, and he obviously doesn't explain it to anybody. And when he goes to college, he befriends this guy, like, supposedly he is his friend. And they're both like into running, so they go practice every day, and they develop this friendship. And one night they're in the dorm, and they're playing video games, and Jared tells him, hey, my roommate's gonna be out of town, so if you want to crash, you could stay here. He was like, okay, I'll do it. And then out of nowhere, he sneaks into his bed and kind of rapes him. Not kind of, he rapes him. But this isn't like like most of the rape scenes in movies, Hollywood movies, is very dramatic, very crazy from the get-go. This is the type of rape that I feel happens a lot more often than people think. So he goes over to his bed. They're in bunk beds, and Jared is obviously attracted to him because he keeps staring at him, but he's letting him in, but not necessarily to do anything. And the other guy like goes for it, and Jared tells him to stop. He screams no, like, dude, stop, what are you doing? And he doesn't stop, and that's why it's considered rape. Afterwards, he confesses to the rapist, confesses to Jared that he has done that to another kid that they saw in a different church. And he leaves, and Jared's just left there torn and crying. He goes home, and this guy notices that Jared has been avoiding him logically, so he decides to give his parents a phone call and out him. Tell him like he was pretending to be a counselor and said that he was doing bad things and that he was gay and stuff like that. So his parents confronted him, especially his dad, and he kept denying it. He kept saying, no, like, that's not even a real counselor. How could you believe him? So after a while, his dad goes up to talk to him and starts telling him, like, like, in a non-direct way, by the way, just cracked my toe, sorry. In a very non-direct way. Oh, the most beautiful thing about life is having a family, getting married, having a wife and kids. And he's like, Dad, like, I told you I didn't do it. But then he comes down for dinner and he just confesses to them at the same time. He's like, the things that they said about me, it's true. That guy that called is not like a counselor. He was supposed to be my friend, and he did terrible things, and he's taking advantage of kids at his church. But it's true about me. I like men. And so obviously they kind of like are taken aback because like they really didn't expect it. Then his dad calls over friends of his from church and people that have been through the same thing, even either themselves or their kids. And they call him downstairs and tell him, you have two options. If you're just going to be this way, that we can't have you like confronting our beliefs or God's rules, so you're out of the house, or if you really want to change, then we have an option for you, but you have to really want it, and it's up to you. And he tells them that he does. he does want to change. So they send him to conversion therapy. There he meets a lot of people, imagine, of all walks of life within the small town, but very different kids, girls, guys, and he sees the abuse that they endure. I mean, at first, they actually had to go to a motel nearby because it's a little bit far from where he lives, and his mom accompanies him. And he starts noticing how abusive they are and how they don't really have any credentials to be doing what they're doing. They hit this guy with the Bible and tell him, like, so the guy was having, I think, homosexual thoughts, so they, like, bad thoughts, and they prepared a funeral for him while he's still alive. They, like, had his family there, had all the people right there in a huge room, kind of like an auditorium, and they just see him getting humiliated and beaten with the Bible and just yelled at. So then he comes back and they ask him, oh, how good does it feel to have Jesus inside of you, or something like that. He's like, oh, it feels good. But he's obviously, like, lost. He's gone. After, and in the meantime, you see flashbacks, like I said, to him in college meeting another guy in an art gallery. They go back home and he tells him, do you believe in God? And they start talking about existential things. And he invites him to his bed, but he tells him, nothing has to happen. Let me prove to you that I'm not the devil. Like God's not going to strike you down if you just lay with another guy. And he did that. They held hands. And this has a lot to do with the story because it was presentation day and Jared had to present, more like confess his sins to everyone there. And he told them that, you know, he had thoughts and he imagined and he was excited by this, by that, and that he held hands with the guy. And then the leader of the group, which is this guy right here, he was like, no, that's not it. That's not it. You can't, like, change if you're not completely honest with us. And he ends up telling him, your dad told us something different. And he's like, hey, you can't do that, because he was being honest. I don't know if you follow, like, I never do the films justice, I always say this, but that's all he did. But he never mentioned the rape part because not even his parents knew that he was raped. He never told anybody. So it was something very private that he didn't want to share with the world. And the guy was just pressuring him into telling him. And so he does this therapy thing where he sits the person down and puts a chair across from him and tells him, this is your dad, tell him how much you hate him. And Jared's like, I don't hate my dad. What are you talking about? Like, I'm not going to tell everybody that I hate him when I don't hate him. And he's like, well, then why are you so angry? And so, because you're making me angry. So then Jared just, like, storms off, tries to run away. This guy tries to hold him down, but he moves and he sneaks into the restroom, grabs his phone because he can't have his phone or notebooks or anything logically. He gives his mom a call, tells her to please pick him up. And she gets there and they don't want to open the door for her. They're like, oh, he's having a crisis and he's having, like, withdrawals, or I don't know what they called it. So he can't go. Like, they were trying to make it seem like this was like a test, like the devil was trying to test him or something like that. They didn't let him go. But the same guy that got beaten with Bibles, he actually tackled the guy that was holding Jared down and let him go. They're like, just let him go. That's a really nice thing. And they do let him go. And his mom obviously yells at the director of the place, like, what are you? Even like a psychologist, I forgot to ask, like, how are you qualified to be doing these things? Like, shame on you. And it's just something like resonated with me a lot. And shame on me too. Shame on me. So they drive away and they're having dinner and she tells him that his father wants him to go back, but that she's gonna stand up for him, that she made a very big mistake, that all her life she's been sidelined, just doing as her husband wants her to do with herself, with her kid, and that she's not going to do that anymore, that she's going to protect them because she knows what's right for him, and she knew that just wasn't right for him. So then they fast forward to Jared in college, and now he's like, well, I think was it like 2 or 3 years later, something like that, and he's been writing like little what is it, articles about his life. and he's received an offer to write a book. So he goes over to his father's house to tell him about it, to let him know what's going to happen, what he's going to be talking about. That's very important to him. And it's important to him that his father knows. But he kind of dismisses him and it's like, oh yeah, like you didn't have to come all the way. Like, yeah, I know. He's like you never like want to talk about it and stuff. Like, I can't, like, I'm done. And let me just fast forward to the day where he was supposed to go back to New York, because he goes to New York to study. His father calls him over to the dealership that he owns and gives him a pen. And he said, with this pen, I've been writing all the sermons, and now it's yours, from one writer to another. And he tells him, I'm done pretending. I'm not going to lie anymore. I'm done. Like, this is who I am. I'm not going to change. I don't want to change. All my life, I've been ridiculed. I've been feeling shame, and I'm just don't. And I'm paraphrasing, obviously. But if you're not willing to change, then I'm not willing to be with someone that's just going to keep hurting me the way you are. And he tells him, I asked God if I was ready to give up my son, if I was ready to lose you. And truth is, I'm not. So you can't expect me to pretend either, because it doesn't come natural to me to accept this, especially the fact that you're probably not going to have kids ever. But I'm going to make an effort because I love you. And that's how the movie ends. The mom also mentions something before this. She tells him, I love God and I love my son, and for me it's very simple, but for your father it's difficult. But gladly the father ends up like kind of bending more towards him, and at the end they show how the original writer, who's how do you say it? The original writer that wrote the real life story, they show pictures of him with his husband and his mom, and I watched like a lot of interviews with them, and it's very sweet to know that they had a very happy ending. I like this movie. Like, okay, that's it for the plot. I know it was long. A lot of people complain that LGBT movies always have like bad endings or like very tormented lives, but for me, like, there are other ones like Love Simon's not like a lot of torments, but for me, I think I identify more with the torment part of things, because it just resonates a lot more, and I feel a lot more real, especially for minorities. Like, maybe if you're in a very liberal household with very accepting society overall, it's just so much different when you have support from other people. But when you don't have support from anyone, it's insanely crazy, the things that like Jared went through. It's insane, and this is still going on. The thing is, I remember little anecdotes. I remember years ago, I was talking to a friend, also from the LGBT community, and he was telling me how he knew someone who was leading a conversion therapy group. And I asked him, what if the person wants to change? Like, who are we to deny that person the right to want to change? Like, obviously, if you ask me, then I'll tell you, no, you can't change. I know for a fact you can't. Like, I really, really, really know you can't. But what if that person believes that they can? Why are we depriving them of that opportunity if these groups, these centers exist? So why not go give it a try and stuff like that? Years later, I think I'm going to talk to him again about that. Because I don't know, it takes years, I guess, sometimes for you to understand that. If you imagine it like a Teletubby Care Bear type of Santa, where like you're gonna talk about things like maybe you're gonna like work out or whatever, but these things get out of control. The abuse, the torment, like you're gonna come out of these places. It reminds me a lot of the Paris Hilton documentary that I also reviewed. You come out of these places traumatized. You don't come out the same, because if somebody's assuring you that this is your bad, this is your mistake, this is your problem, you could do something about it, then what is something that they end up doing all the time? Something that I forgot to mention that happened in this movie. The guy that helped Jared escape, he ended up dying of suicide. And that's what happens with these kids, because if you're going to tell somebody that this is like your option, you know, you could choose it. So you're saying, well, if I'm so bad, if I'm so terrible, if I'm just like doing harm to the world, or, you know, going against the word of God, then might as well just end it all. It's a lot of suffering. Like, for you to accept yourself is hard as it is. So imagine having to be accepted, or wanting to be accepted by a whole bunch of people that are just not going to comprehend it, or are telling you they're not going to comprehend it. It was, I think, very very courageous of Jared to speak up and stand up for himself, to his parents, especially his dad. At the end, it's something that really breaks your heart and makes you really question. Like, he also had it good, because there are a lot of parents, like, I mean, he didn't have it good all the time, but the ending was beautiful. I'm here choking, I'm sorry. I've been talking for a long time. I'm gonna end it soon. But yeah, it's very nice that his father actually, I mean, it's just normal. Like I said, we can't keep doing these things because a lot of people are dying. A lot of people that have nothing to do with the LGBT community. Like, just stop. Like, just listen. That's all you have to do. Listen carefully. If there's something that you're doing and it's not working, if you're beating your child, whatever, if you're scolding them, if you're punishing them, and you realize that it's just getting worse, seek other options, but avoid going into these prison camps, because it's not going to help them. I mean, that's my opinion. I've heard some people say that it saved their lives. So I can't speak for everybody, but for me, personally, I think that you had a child is your responsibility. Of course, seeking professional help by licensed professionals is a very good way to go. But for the most part, I think that if there's not a serious mental issue, like a very serious diagnosis, then all your kids need is you. And if you want your kids, then I'm pretty sure you can make an effort to investigate, educate yourself, and help them. All you need is love, like the Beatles said. It really comes down to just that. The performances here, I remember Nicole Kidman really surprised me, because she's obviously huge. She's very famous, but I'm not very familiar with her work aside from the Aquaman movie. And when I watched her in this, I was like, okay, now I get what all the fuss is about. Like, she's an amazing actress. Obviously, Russell Crowe as well. And Lucas Hedges, he's an upcoming actor whom I watched in Lady Bird and is it Honey Boy? The movie, the story of Shia LaBeouf. And he's amazing. He's great. Highly recommend this movie. 10 out of 10 in its category. I know I talked a lot. I'm sorry. And thank you for watching.